Good morning, everybody. It is Tuesday. We're a little bit earlier. It is 9:30, not 11 o'clock. So thanks very much for being early. Welcome to everybody just joining us now. If you're joining us for the first time, make sure that you click on the StreamYard link. That way, when you ask questions at the end, your Facebook profile will come up. So today's topic is, how do you actually get the most out of social media? And I have a very special guest with me today, Angela Vithoulkas. So I just want to read her bio out because she's a very, very impressive lady. I met a few years ago, actually at an election booth, right? But Angela is a multi-award-winning business owner who has forged a successful career in the public, business, and corporate life. She's the founder and host of the new YouTube channel, SME TV and podcast. Angela has many awards, including New South Wales Entrepreneur of the Year, as well as the Telstra Women's Business of the Year. And in 2017, Angela was named one of Australia's top 9 influential female entrepreneurs. Extraordinary. Angela's political career began in 2012, and since then she has been twice elected to City of Sydney Councilor and has founded the Small Business Party, running local, state and federal elections. Welcome, Angela.
Good morning. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much, Glenn.
Hey, we've been chatting a little bit, but for those people who don't know you, as I have read out that particular bio, they haven't met you in person, why don't you just tell us a little bit about Angela?
Gosh, in 75 words or less. Let me see. So, I am at heart a small business owner. I was raised in a small business, and I've pretty much never had what other people would call a proper job because I've always worked for myself, and that's how I see myself. I don't see myself as an entrepreneur because I didn't grow up with that option in the drop-down menu because there wasn't such a thing. We always teach just the self-employed box, and I guess that's how I feel, in charge of my destiny.
Yeah, when I first met you, it was at and in Paddington at one of the election booths. And from the moment that I've met you, you've always been very, very passionate about the small business owner having a voice. All right. So today's topic really is about that. So who are the people that you feel like you serve now or are trying to serve?
It's an interesting question because people approach me for help around either advocacy or seeking justice, and they're not always a small business owner. In fact, I've just answered a bunch of emails this morning and they all start with, I know I'm not a small business owner, but can you help me? So I guess it's expanded because I seem to be getting the growing reputation for helping the individual as opposed to necessarily the business or the group. So for me, it's very much about, if you need help, I know what it's like to need it, and I try to do my best where I can. I've been seeking justice. What my father used to say about me is, you're always looking for the right answer, not necessarily understanding that sometimes there isn't one.
But sometimes it might be the right answer for now. You know, it's not the rightest answer. All right.
In politics, politics and business are very, very different. So I sometimes hesitate with giving an answer because I wear so many hats, but it's a very different world. In business, it can be a lot more clinical. It's all about numbers. It's a spreadsheet. It's about growth. It's about being profitable. In politics, it's about being popular.
Yeah, look, whilst we're not a political show, it's more a business show. It seems to me that you can make a decision in politics in, say, 2012, it now be 2020, except they will bring up the issue of 2012 and said, hey, you said this. And of course, a lot of circumstances change. I mean, in business, I can't imagine that a business owner would say, well, hang on a tick, you gave me a coffee in 2012 and it was $1.80. How come it's $5 today? And I got this on the side and this on the side. I mean, come on, really, things changed, don't they? And you've got to keep up with the times.
Well, even business recognises that even if you fail and you happen to go into liquidation, at some point that gets wiped. Not so in politics.
Yeah, I can see that. It just seems to haunt you. So I guess you really do need to make a decision. This is what I'm going to do, but all my past is going to come up and haunt me. So tell me, what has been your biggest learning in running a business, or however long you've run a business for? What's the
So
biggest thing you've learned?
in 30 years that I've been in business, apart from the actual day-to-day operations, because you'll always learn something from there, it's to always try and take as much emotion out of the equation, because I tend to sometimes lead with that, how I feel around something, which is normal for me, but it doesn't always mean I'm going to make the right long-term decision. So the best advice I ever give to anyone is get up and move from where you're sitting. So when you're looking at trying to make a decision, whether it's easy or difficult, stop looking at it from where you sit, change places and come at it from the other way, because somewhere in there you'll find the right way of doing it. You'll actually meet the point in the road where your emotions and the whole realistic situation will converge and you'll feel better.
It is a struggle sometimes, because I'm an emotional person. I react with a lot of feeling, and I know that hasn't always served me. But sometimes it's the feeling that drives the passion. All right. And so what you're saying is you've got to still continue to have that passion for what you do, but remove yourself from there and come at it from a completely 180 degrees or the 270-degree angle, and see, well, how else is another way that we could actually solve this particular problem? And look, I'm not a big one on seeing problems. I'm sort of saying there are situations that arise, and it's how you deal with those situations. All right. We tend to as humans have a way of putting things into, I've got this problem. Well, it's not a problem. It's just a situation that's happened. It's how you deal with it. If you think it's a problem, then yeah, it'll be a problem. Okay, so what are you doing right now? Because I mean, when I first met you, you're running you had a political campaign, and you just got out of business with a cafe. So what are you doing these days?
So I think the process of losing a business, because that's a very steep learning curve when you've never faced that kind of situation before. Sometimes, some people are lucky and they're successful forever. Some people aren't, and things can happen in life, whether they're your fault or not. It's a bit like, you insure your car it's not always your fault, but that's why you carry insurance in case it's not. Correct. So in my circumstance, when we lost the business, I kind of was curled up in the fetal position for a long time. Sometimes I revisit that spot occasionally. And I was trying to find myself again, Glenn. I'd been a business owner, and a very active, hands-on, successful business owner for 30 years. And suddenly, overnight, I had to pick the date for the execution of my business. It was all about light rail, and it was deteriorating, and it took years for it to happen. But still, that day came, and it took a long time for me to my friends always tried to remind me that, you've got to remember how much you've done and what you've achieved. And, those things for me, the way I deal with life at that time, they were irrelevant. I kept saying, but who I was last year is not who I am today. And it was a really steep learning curve. And in amongst all of that, because when you reach a very low point, you find things out about yourself. And I realized that I did have a passion for something else besides the kind of businesses that I was in, and that was telling people's story to make their lives different. Now, that sometimes is because they've got a great story, more people need to hear about it, which could be their business idea, but it was inevitably sometimes people who had a story because there was an injustice that needed to be righted. And I searched, I kept thinking, well, who's telling these stories and where is this platform? And I couldn't find one. So in my usual small business spirit, I said, well, how hard can it be to make your own? Yet again, Glenn, I have discovered something else that is actually quite difficult to do. Easy to say, much tougher to follow through. But I have. I mean, it's taken a few months. It took a year. I pitched mainstream media, my small business show idea. They loved it, but they also wanted $400,000 from me to give them to make the show a reality. And I think I was disappointed like on a Monday, and then by Friday I'd come up with a whole new business plan to go do it solo and find a way around it. And I did.
So just on that, so we've led a similar life in that my last business, I wasn't ready to exit either, right? I was at the top of my career. I was really enjoying it. Our clients were loving it, getting great results. And I just thought I was on gangbusters, right? And then it got taken away. Now, one of my core values is business relationships. My next one is intimate relationships, and underneath that is social relationships. So I couldn't contact these people for 3 years for a clause within my contract. And so it made it really difficult. And whilst on the outside I seemed like, yeah, I'm fine, I was actually crumbling inside. I actually just couldn't work out, well, if I don't have that, who am I? So I think during that particular process now, I don't see that as being a negative experience. I see that as being, wow, I've noticed how resilient I am. I've noticed how much more abundant attitude that I have. I've definitely noticed that I'm not someone who follows, I'm someone who leads from the front. And so that's what started my Facebook Live channel. Did I know it all at the beginning? No. But I actually feel really comfortable sort of going, you know what? We'll figure it out along the way, so long as I listen to whatever's going on, in my heart, and then sort of reach out to those people, because I have an amazing network of people, and we'll figure it out together. But you've got to, stay true to that sort of passion. Sounds like you've done the same sort of thing.
It's very lonely. You're right, Glenn. When those bad moments come about, and you question, have I made wrong decisions my whole life because I put myself in that position that I would end up hurt? And my heart broke. And there's no other way of looking at it except that my heart, which was my business, because that's what I put into it, I had gone to the same premises for 18 years. I'd had other businesses in the meantime, but I was emotionally attached. 18 years out of a person's life, to know that one day I wasn't coming back, and that was the day that I picked because I had to set a date. And yes, my heart broke so much. I felt like it would never recover, that I would never be as attached to something else again. And maybe, Glenn, I didn't want to be. I was scared, because what if the next time I was in that same position, I didn't think I'd ever be able to overcome it. I know that I can. Doesn't mean I'm in a hurry to go through that again, but that's business. I mean, someone was very cruel and callous to me at the time to say to me, why are you acting like this? It's just business. You should know that. You should know that these things happen, and, just move on.
Not a lot of empathy with that person.
Wise words, but very cold. It's hard to move on. That day was. Yeah.
So tell me, what did you learn by the experience, and how can you apply that and share that with business owners here? One of the things I love getting across in this particular channel is when people place themselves in vulnerability, right? Others who are listening to this particular show will listen and going, wow, that happened to Angela, that happened to Glenn. Okay, I'm dealing with exactly the same thing. How have you or might not have been turned, but might be turning it around to now serve you?
I felt like I asked myself, why was I so heartbroken? And I shockingly said to myself, is it your ego and your pride that's hurt? Is that what's taken the beating now? Are you, or your confidence? I had to find out what it was that was hurting me so bad if I was going to pick myself up, because I felt that everybody else was judging me by my loss. So I had all these things were turning around in my head about how people would see me as a failure now. And I kept using these words in this language that I kept hearing one common theme. I was worried about how everyone else was going to perceive me, because, I mean, you read my bio out. I have labels. I've won this award. I've done this. I've done that. There's no award that goes best loss or highest low achiever. You are remembered I felt at that time I was only ever going to be remembered for the peaks and not for the low points. And there's some truth to that, Glenn, because a lot of people forget about you when you're not flying high. And
I'd agree.
it was a harsh realization. Now, I hadn't saved for a rainy day. And when I say saved, it's not money. I hadn't saved another part of my life for when I wouldn't have that life. And that was my fault. That's where I fell down because, you know, we talk about other revenue streams, or we talk about, you know, having an exit plan or a succession plan and having those things in place. And I knew better and I had avoided dealing with that. So my biggest lesson has been to understand what a rainy day can mean. And it's not just about saving money. It's about having something in place that you can continue with if that moment comes. I don't want people to assume that that moment will come, but more than likely that moment will come for good reasons too. And so many retired people, for instance, in corporate life, they retire and then they go crazy because they don't have something else to do because work was such a big part of their life.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been my lesson, that rainy day came for me, and it was all about my work life and my career and my worth and what I was going to do about it. So I'm hoping I've learned that lesson.
Fingers crossed. Yep. You know, I always remember the Monty Pythons when you see two fish and they're swimming in a bowl, and one of the fish turns to the other fish and went, "Oh, look, a castle." And then they swim around the bowl, and then the other fish says, "Oh, look, a castle." And they keep on swimming around and just noticing that. And I see those lessons where I've learned something and then not learnt the lesson, right? Swum around the bowl again, come back and gone, there's another lesson. And I'm like, Glenn, how many times do I need to learn, you know, have this lesson pop up for me to learn and adapt and then sort of grow? Okay, so so you're now applying all of this sort of knowledge to, and really you said it before, about people having a voice, all right, for the injustice sort of thing. And how do they tell their story? For a lot of business owners, they don't communicate that very well, do they?
No, it's tough to tell your own story because you focus on one or two parts of your business and you think, well, why can't people just see the story? Especially when you've got a lot of noise and people saying, you know, you've got a brand, boost your personal brand, all these things that sometimes business owners just kind of go, say what? And they don't know how to push themselves in front to be the face of a business. Or more importantly, Glenn, they don't want to be the face of the business. They just want to get on with doing what they love doing for all the right reasons. But the reality is that it is a noisy world, and, you know, putting yourself forward and telling your story is another tool to help promote your business and grow and carve out your niche. And like it or not, you need to be able to tell your story.
So when I look at, you know, like little devices like this is where our time really goes. You know, I remembered an entrepreneur, actually it was someone on social media, Gary V, who sort of said, you know, you've got to watch where the eyeballs are going. They're no longer looking at the TV and the ads or the billboards. They're now looking at the screens. Now, you've started a new business called SME TV and Podcast, right? Tell us a little bit about what happens there. And then if you wouldn't mind just sort of explaining, how do you using that channel and what are the things that you're looking for to help, you know, the small business owner?
So again, my timing is impeccable. So while I came up with this idea and was knocked back by mainstream media, or rather I chose not to give them $400,000 that I didn't have, I still think that's my decision, right? I launched when COVID started. I shot the pilot 2 days before Sydney went into lockdown. And, you know, none of us knew at the time or could define what lockdown was going to be. And I didn't realize myself what I was doing. And we were hopeful that we would come out of it very quickly. We did to some degree, but when you're launching a new business, it's the last thing you need is a global pandemic. We use that to our advantage to learn more about who we wanted to be. You know, I went in shooting a pilot with one type of segmented show, and I've come out the other end in a very different way, having learnt a lot, and that's just in the space of 7 months. So the goal was always about to deal with news and views. So it was to bring the right kind of news that small businesses needed to know, and of course their views, but that's more about their story, about their business. The criteria is that it has to be news, or it has to be a business that has an incredible story, or the owner has an incredible story to tell. It's not about them being media ready. I have no interest in that. That's why I'm there, is to help them tell that story. So we don't bring people into a studio or do it via Zoom in another way to have them have to worry about communicating. It's my job to know what to say. It's my job to help present them in the best possible way, or it's also my job to bring the news in a way that small business can understand it. And JobKeeper and JobSeeker and the Mandatory Tenancies Code and all of those things around that have been so relevant right now in bringing that information forward, that the timing maybe wasn't quite right for the business plan, but it was certainly right for the audience.
Correct. I mean, if you would say, what is the thing that you're doing right now to help promote the business? It's
actually trading off the brand that we bring with it. So I've developed a great organic following over the years because of maybe the high profile life that I've led. I've also been very lucky to have, collaborated with a lot of other influential people. So it's just using what I've had a knack of doing, which is just expand my own network and collaborate with others. I like to play nice with as many people as I can. I've joined forces with a national small business organisation, the SME Association, and I'm very privileged and lucky that they've also recognised this product that we're producing and the content, and to give that to their members. They've got 240,000 national members around Australia, so it's great exposure for businesses. Wow. And that's separate to the external organic following that we're looking at. So I think everywhere that we feature, which is right across any digital platform, we bring a level of engagement that's real and authentic that mainstream media can't replicate. So you should feel safe knowing that it's not about your following, it's about what we bring to the table, and that is the skill to communicate your story and expand the audience that you get to say it to.
So there's a couple of things you really just touched on that make me sort of shine. You said, first of all, you went to your existing list or contacts, right? Whether it be, you're fortunate you had a high profile. So you went to all those people that have been following you and said, hey, here I am, this is what I'm doing. You also then said, hey, listen, I'm going to partner up with other organizations. And one of them was SME. So that was a channel that had, 240,000 members. And that also gave you extra exposure. And then you're starting to look for what I call joint ventures, strategic alliances, that sort of thing, again, to grow your ultimate following. So if you're a business owner, there's 3 really great lessons that Angela's just shared with you. Because, there are others. I mean, you can buy a list, all right? That's costly. And you saw that one particular organization wanted to charge Angela $400,000 to do it. But she's seen the problem and sort of going, you know what? I'm going to keep the 400,000 and I'm going to go and attack it and go about it this way. And all of a sudden she formed a relationship with SME that has 240,000. So she might have just saved herself that money. So that's a really key point there. She could have gone out and done cold calling. All right. But who the hell loves cold calling? All right. It's very much people want to hear your story, get to understand you as a person. And that's what comes out, as you're suggesting, in social media, or the way that you're doing it. So they get an understanding of who you are, your essence, and what you're about. And then you can push your product and stuff like that. But you just can't do that straight up, can you?
No,
the way to do it is through the story, sorry.
That's right. It's through the story. It's also through the ability for me to pick up on all the tough lessons that I've learned. You know, I used to manage 40 or 50 staff at any one time. I was really good at delegating. I could see through something and I knew that that's what we needed to get it done. Then I found myself in another startup type of position where I no longer have access to those kind of teams. I can't necessarily delegate now because we run on a very tight budget. I have to do a lot of things myself. That's how I used to do it in the early days. And much as I'm annoyed with myself sometimes when I remember, like, why can't we just get someone to do it? I love the fact that I'm having to relearn a lot of skills, which means that as I grow this organisation again and I'm able to delegate, I'll also actually know how it should be done, because I think that's what I got right in my previous business life. And I want to replicate that part. Plus, it's a media business. It's about reaching out and talking to people. It's about communicating. And if I don't do that myself online, then what kind of an example am I setting?
Yeah, one of the things in my last business was I used to think that I used to have to show up and be the best referrer, the best visitor bringer, the best representation of my brand. And that's all true, but I didn't realize that it sets a very high bar. And when somebody's trying to learn or to mimic that, sometimes it can seem like worlds apart. And so if it's worlds apart, they just go, you know what? Too hard. I can't do that. I can't do that. So one of the things I learned is to show my vulnerability, that I'm human and that I make mistakes. And I often found the more that I shared that in a public platform, the more that it connected with my audience. I went, oh, okay, so he does make mistakes. I didn't see that before, and he wasn't like as polished when he started to what he is now. I don't think that can happen in your political life, but
it happens all the time. You're right. Not perfect, Glenn. I thought you were.
Yeah, well, my branding is working, but I actually want to let you know I'm part human too, not a robot. So,
and we're grateful for it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you posted one of your favorite quotes is saying, "Success is not final, failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts." Winston Churchill. What does that mean for you?
I found myself remembering when I was in my very low points and I was trolling through my memories. And I remembered the first time I won an award, and I'd said to myself, what if this is as good as it gets? What if this is it? What if there's no other part to my story to be written except this one time that I got it really, really right? And I think that was a fear that I carried with me for a long time. And then subsequently, I'd realised that you're never just successful once, and you're never just successful in one area. So I thought, wow, if I can learn that, then I'll be very free to just have fun and do things that I enjoy somehow. Having learned that failure is really not final, you know, I did get up out of bed eventually. I don't feel the need to burst into tears every time I relive my last trading day. You know, all these things about myself, Glenn, that I hated that I was like that. And having realised that, I read this saying by Winston Churchill, because he has another saying that I love, and I was following him. I was reading something about him and I went, oh my gosh, that is me. I'm going to take that with me everywhere now. And that's why, because it's never a final chapter, no matter which part of it you're writing. It's never the end of a book.
You know, I reached out to you the other day, and I don't know why I didn't think about it, but when you were sharing your story, when we were chatting at the polling booth, you were sharing that you're a cafe owner, right? And I didn't know that. I just saw you as the politician, right? Mm-hmm. And this week, I had an opportunity to sort of share that insights that you gave me the other day to someone who's considering buying a cafe. And I sort of went, you know what? Maybe that could be a new path for Angela. Maybe you become a cafe mentor. You don't really know these days as why you're learning the lessons or why you needed that experience for the next part of your life. But when you look back, you know, at your life, you're sort of going, oh yeah, they all seem to connect. So at the time, you don't realize why it's happening, but it could just be for something better or a lesson that you needed to learn to sort of go, this is why I have such magic in my life right now. I mean, God, you don't date the first frog you kiss, right? You just see what they're like and sort of going, there's parts about that frog I like and parts about that frog I don't like.
In my case, the pond is full of those frogs.
Right. Okay. Right. And listen, we got a question or a comment from somebody watching here. I'm just going to throw it up. Great message about authenticity when communicating one's story, but also about collaboration and alliances. Question for later, if possible, and if there's time. What are your thoughts, Angela, on a person or a business owner allowing themselves to completely vulnerable in the delivery of their story? That's a great one. Okay. I believe that there are too many people who are watering down or sanitizing their story because they're worried about being seen as weak and not credible. Now, that's a great question. So, Angela, I'm going to ask you to ask that from two ways. One, say your political life, and two, as a business owner.
I have been that person that has watered down or ignored or wanted to sweep under the carpet any failings and any failures. And they are two different things, right? Failings are the way you execute or operate or what you've done, and failures sometimes you're not responsible for, but you're part of. You're right. You don't get to share yourself and help others to overcome or learn lessons unless you expose that vulnerability. But people are protective of their brands and their image, and they're worried that others may view them. And again, as I mentioned earlier, Glenn, judging, you're worried about what other people will think of you. It's a personal choice. I'm not going to judge if you do or if you don't, because people have different ways of dealing with their own issues and challenges that come up. That's really important too, that you always feel safe in how you live your life. However, when you face these fears and you say them out loud and you share them with others, you actually end up putting a smile on your face at some point. And it's beautiful. It's actually really beautiful because you deal with it, you move through it, you come out of it the other side, not just with lessons for you, but with lessons for someone else. It's around the loss and grief, right? If we understand as human beings, we will experience loss and grief in our lives because Mother Nature, that's how it is. Somewhere along the line, that's what happens. So we're built to actually cope with it. We don't think so, but we are. And failure is a loss, and it comes with grief, and you do work through it, and you do come out the other side. So those people that aren't prepared, perhaps, to show the full force of it, they're not ready to deal with it, is my view, but just my view. Politically, that's a problem, Glenn, because I wear two hats, and I'm inclined to be very revealing as a business owner, to present those weaknesses in a political world. It could either cost you votes or perhaps pre-selection within your party. People don't want to back the person that's failed. On the other hand, they say that every great political career ends in failure. So how about that for an end use by? So, yeah, I mean, there are lessons to be learnt, and one of those for me continuously has been, it's overlapped for me now because I've been so vulnerable and publicly people know what I've gone through. It's hard to hide the fact that you've lost such a massive business in the middle of CBD. I have brought that over into my political life, and I think it's made me more fearless, not fearful. Highly recommend the end result. I'm happy to hold your hand during it because you need all the help and support you can get when you're going through it.
I agree. This question is by Sal. He's a recruiter, and I don't know, as the why I was asking, but it's a great question. My way of answering that, Sal, is I think about my life and what brings me happiness and joy. All right, and so when I work with clients, who resonate with me, and we're in that that buzz sort of moment, that's when I get the greatest pleasure, right? It's a bonus that they pay me, right, and that I earn money through that. I've also accepted money from some, let's just call them arseholes, right? And they, the money's the same amount, all right? So you can only get paid in some of the businesses I've had by one particular business category. So I know who I would rather work with. My point being is that you only attract those types of people into your life when you yourself actually place yourself vulnerable. I did this exercise on the on the Gold Coast one time, and I was doing some work for a large bank, and I said to all the senior managers, I want you to walk up the beach and I want you to have a frown, and then I don't want you to talk to anyone, and as people are walking past, I want you to look at them and frown at them, and then I want you to come back and tell me what you learned. And they said, well, everybody was really nasty and gave me dagger eyes and didn't really want to communicate. I said, great. I want you to walk up the same beach, but this time I want you to smile and wave and be happy with everybody. And they came back and they said, everybody was happy. And I said, my point is, if you want people around you to be a certain way, you need to be that first. So my thing to you, Sal, is if you want clients who are not like you, they can still challenge you, but you need to give yourself first. So 3 great answers there. 1 business owner from Angela, 1 political, and then myself. I hope that helps, Sal. So Angela, we'll wrap up the show, but I wanted to find out who are the people that you'd encourage to reach out. And while you're talking, I'm going to grab the YouTube channel and I'm going to place it in the comments area. But who should be a part of this particular channel and why?
Any business owner who feels that they have a story to tell. So it's not a category as it's irrelevant what you make, what you sell, what service you provide. Some of the best stories I've heard of, being people who say they don't have a story to tell, and people who have a view on something. So that would come more into the news category. Some of the people that we bring on to discuss something like, for instance, NBN, they're not people who have built NBN or had anything to do with it from the perspective of install or create policy, but they're certainly very outspoken and intelligent enough to point out, where that whole process has gone wrong and what it hasn't delivered for people. And, given that it's a huge part of our life moving forward, and that's an interesting angle because, that covers for me my whole life because it's political, it's about business, it's about the individual, it's about standards, products, ethics. So I'm really interested in anything. If you're a startup or if you've been around for decades, if you have a business idea that you're looking for more input on, there's no end. I mean, you could be part of a small business community, not even a small business. Maybe you're another association, maybe you're another organization. Please don't think that we would view you in a competitive mode. I mean, some of the best people that I've got lined up coming through interviews are people that have their own business shows of some kind. It's, our customers, our audience listen to more than one thing. And we want that, right? We want that depth and diversity of the audience to keep us all honest and on our toes, but also to see how great we collaborate. I've been working with some media people in Victoria because the Melbourne small businesses, the Victorian small businesses have been hit really hard, and we've been trying to uplift them. And, they're our brothers and sisters. So whoever you are, I'm sure you're the right fit for us.
When you do look at this pandemic that's been thrown upon us, it very much changed the landscape in terms of being a business owner. And I know that probably the most overused word during the pandemic for me was pivot. But it changed the way that we felt like we had to communicate with people. And people then started doing some stuff online. If they had a face-to-face sort of business, and then they had to start going online. And then what was incongruent for me was they were completely different people online than they were when you meet them. What would you say to people when they're trying to represent themselves online when they've got a face-to-face sort of business?
that's a it can come under a personal branding if they choose to be the face of the business. And I think that's the part where you've got to be harsh and objective and realistic to yourself, because if you're not true and authentic, and it's a bit, I use an example here of sometimes the picture you put up on a dating app, right? If it's 20 years old, you're not going to be the same person in real life when they turn up to meet you for the first time. Is that how you want any relationship, client, business or personal, to start, with them looking at you going, you're not the same. Maybe you're better, maybe you're not, but you need to rethink that, because you don't have to be anything other than you. And please don't say or think that you're not enough. You're plenty. You're more than enough, but you have to let you come out and not be fearful of it. And not everyone is geared to every platform, Glenn. You know, some people are great with audio, not with visual. You know, some people are better with written content as opposed to projected content. I think it's okay to understand where your strengths are and then choose to work on the others if you want to, but don't let anyone pigeonhole you. And you said the word pivot, Glenn. There's a great, on Foxtel, if anyone watches it, there's a great highlight that they're doing at the moment where they're replaying Ross from Friends and the couch episode, and all he says is pivot, pivot, pivot. and we hate, I mean, it's the same hate and frustration in his voice on that word as I can hear of what's going out there online at the moment. Yes, you have to pivot, but that comes back to my very early point of having a plan B, or another way, or another part of your life, or something to go into that's saving for a rainy day. You have to expect that you're going to need to pivot. So we should already be working on
that. Faith just comes up and says she's from Newcastle. She runs a business where she does a workplace and audits, making sure that the environment for the worker is safe. Does a fantastic job. But anyway, she mentions, what's a comment? Here we go. Great tip. Okay, so thanks very much, Faith. Thanks for being part of the show. So let's, any parting final words from Angela? So
I know that many of you have been really tried and tested during this special year, because it's going to go down as 2020 will be a very special year for everyone around the world, and we'll all have those stories to tell with the future. What did you do in 2020? But reflect on the fact that everyone is going through something right now. There's no isolated person that somehow is finding themselves celebrating this time. Some are doing better than others, absolutely, and some aren't doing very well. Whatever you are going through, it's okay. Some of it has something to do with you and how you're going to cope. A lot of it doesn't. So don't judge yourself by this year's results, but rather just pick yourself up, and it does get better and it does get easier. I really want you to understand that I have been to the lowest point of business. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. I went there and they sent me back. No.
This too shall pass.
Yes, 100%.
100%. I have this little saying next to myself. I'll just put it up here, and it just says, "I'm resilient, encouraging, abundant, and leader." And I just remind myself these are all lessons that I've learned, and I just keep that next to my computer and just remind myself all the time to go. Stick with it,
I just go, come on, wake up.
Yeah. All right. That's awesome. Hey, Angela, so awesome to have you on the show here. Thank you so much for sharing, really from the heart. One of the things I'd love you to do if you're listening to this particular show, I'll put in the link to Angela's YouTube channel. I'd love you to subscribe. I'd love you to reach out and sort of make a comment on one of the shows. I'd love you to go that a little bit extra, find a show that resonated with you and pop that on your social media to help her bring greater awareness. She's doing great work. We really appreciate people that you, certainly during the pandemic, for people that just stand up and let other business people, even just people, have a bit of a path. So thank you very much. To everybody else, all right, it is Glenn Kirkwood, aka That Referral Guy, signing off. Until next Tuesday, remember to make, share, and build connections. Have a great, amazing week, everyone. Bye for now.
Thank you.